looking at his family, like I said to you before, looking at his family, just so that we can gain, because this thing about death, this is something that we need to get used to, and as people in the West, we are not used to it. But just to see the reaction of his family, of what they said, what happened when their beloved husband or father passed away. As for his wife, what she said, that when she was asked about him about his shahada, she said that verily I was always expecting something like this to happen, because people like him, they have many enemies. Okay, so I was expecting something like this to happen. And his enemies, they were planning day and night. So at that time itself, when it happened, I was in the kitchen, and when I heard this bomb, because this bomb, when it went up, it could be heard for more than 1 kilometer radius. It was such a humongous explosion. She says, and the main point I'm trying to get from here is her reaction and her sabr. She says that I was in the kitchen, and when I heard this bomb, and this was only 5 minutes after he left the house, that something in my heart, your father. And she says that when she then eventually found out what happened, she said, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un." And she says that I said Alhamdulillah, but the thing that really concerned me a bit was that I was a bit scared of my other children, because I didn't want them to be shaheed except in the front line. My other 2 children, I did not want them to be shaheed except in the front line. This is her himself saying this. But she says, "Walakin qaddara Allahu sabaq walhamdulillah ala kulli hal." She's a bit disappointed at the fact that they weren't shaheed at the front line. They're shaheed in this way. And I've already mentioned to you some of the things, what kind of person he was, in the house. Going towards his other son, Hudhayfa, who's roughly 15. Okay. Just to see his reaction towards what happened. He said that in that morning itself, I had planned to go with my other brother Ibrahim to do some sports. But my father said to me that we can't go before we read Surah Al-Kahf and do some adhkar and after Jummah. So once we had done this, we had planned to do all this. And eventually, he did a few things. He came back to the house, and he saw that his father, he was writing this, he was just writing his khutbah, and he had this paper, and this is the paper that I'm talking about. This is the treaty. He says, I don't know exactly what he wrote in this treaty, but it was basically a treaty of peace between Rabbani and Hikmachair. And Hikmachair, as we know, joined he traded amongst the Muslims, and he joined the Shias later on. And the Rabbani, unfortunately, he joined the Americans, the Northern Alliance. And again, this is an important point for us, because Sheikh Abdullah Azzam, he's very crucial. He's very crucial in bringing the Mujahideen commanders together. And a lot of people have said that if there had been other scholars, right, to take his place, then the work would have continued. But the Muslim heroes, there are very few of the scholars who take up this type of sacrifice. And just continuing, just to say some of the key points. Just to say some of the key points that he says about him. He says about the Shaykh. He says about his father. He says that it was very rare that we would sit with our father in the house, because we would only see him very little. He was always doing the work, and whenever we would see him, his tongue would always be in the remembrance of Allah and jihad, and he would also always be trying to put in us the love of jihad, of shahada, into our hearts. And he would have no other more important concern than this concern. And he would always encourage us to memorize the Quran. And Hudhayfa himself, he was a Sharia student in Amman. And this was his main thing. And that was his reaction. Just to go through his reaction of his youngest son, who is 5. He says, and the point I'm trying to gain here, right, is because if you look at the majority of children today, right, the majority of 5-year-olds, right, they're into Teletubbies, they're into, Spider-Man, they're into, David Beckham, I just want to make people think, I just want people to realize this is the way how a son of a hero should be thinking. the interviewer, he says to him that, where's your father? Where were you born? He says, I was born in Islamabad. The interviewer says to him that, what's your original country? He says, Mus'ab, his name, he says, Palestine. He says, where's your father? He goes, my father right now, he's in paradise. He goes, the interviewer, they say to him, this is a 5-year-old saying this. He says, who killed your father? He goes, Mus'ab goes, that the kuffar, they killed my father. He goes, how did they kill him? They say they put a bomb underneath his car. So, he knows what's going on. He's not somebody, they said, put him to the side, he's just a young boy. He knows what's going on. He goes, who was with him at the time? He goes that Muhammad and Ibrahim are his 2 elder brothers, and they are also in paradise with my father right now. And this is Aqidah, ingrained, immersed in his heart. And وَلَا نُزَكِّي عَلَى اللَّهِ أَحَدًا. And the interviewer then says that, do you wish to join them? He goes, yes, I wish to die as a shaheed, and then they will take me to the qabr, and then Sayyidina Jibreel, he will come to me, and inshallah, and he will then take me to paradise. This is the Aqidah of a 5-year-old. And then the interviewer says to him that, what do you want to do before you're a shaheed? He goes, he says that I want to be killed the way my father was killed. And then they say to him that, what did your mother do when she heard about the shahada? Musab, he says, and he's a 5-year-old, therefore he's only tell the truth. He says, قالت مبروك, that she said that, blessed, be blessed. And then the interviewer says that, have you been to Afghanistan? Because they listened to Peshawar. And he goes, yes, I've been 3 times. So 3 times this 5-year-old has been to, Afghanistan, the land of jihad. And he goes, and then they say to him, who's your example? And here he didn't say David Beckham or something stupid like that. He goes, my father, he's my example. And he goes, do you make dua for your father? He goes, yes. I say, Ya Rab adkhilhu Jannah. So this is just to give you, this is the son of a hero. Just to quickly mention why he was killed. I mean, it's obvious why he was killed, and all the reasons I've mentioned already were the reasons why he was killed. But just to add to that, just some of the statements, and this is some of the brothers they wrote to reply to why he was killed. Some of his statements. One of the statements he said that he was famous for was that he said that verily the political solution that Americans and the Russians, are trying to go towards solving the problems of the Muslims, this is false, and this is prohibited shar'an. This is prohibited, by intelligence. Okay, and we have learned from our experiences in Palestine, because and Palestine, the fear of Palestine is still going on. The problem of Palestine is still going on. Okay, and other places that the only solution that is possible for us is the sounds of the guns. And if we were to take this matter to the national gatherings or like UN and that type of thing, then this would actually mean sending these matters to the rubbish bin. Okay, this is what you talk about political solution, what a lot of Muslims think about. And this would mean sending these problems to his expected certain death. Another of his statements, he said, verily we have done the farida, and he thought the farida, farida's obligation. He said that we have fulfilled the obligation of the ibadah of jihad in Palestine, and then something came between us and it, i.e. this ibadah, and then so we looked around in the world for another place that we could worship Allah with this ibadah of jihad, and we found the land of Afghanistan. And the last statement I will say about this statement, he says here that the mind will not be settled, and the determination will not be firm until we return to Palestine with jihad. And we have made it a duty upon ourselves that we will not go back from this tariq al-Rabbani. Rabbani means divine, and this divine way that has a root between it, Kabul, and Quds. So basically, all these things make very clear that basically its next aim after Afghanistan was Palestine itself. So inshallah, just to mention some of the main key points, i.e. the legacy he leaves behind. His inspiration, I mean, if you listen to his lectures, like I said to you before, he would be always encouraging the people, and he would always remind the brothers that, look, even though we are few, history has shown itself that the heroes have always been a minority. You look at the heroes that we've done today, for example, like Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. Imam Shafi'i, and there's a quote he says here in the beginning of this course. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, Imam Shafi'i, Al-Izz bin Abdul Salam, An-Nawawi, Sayyid Qutb, Hassan al-Banna, Abdul Aziz al-Badri, Salih al-Sirriya. He says, what eternalized their memories, what sustained their mention, how were their names written in books? Indeed, the pages of history are few, and in them are not written except the names of great people. And how did these names reach this level except with their actions, except with their jihad, except with their sacrifices, and except with their steadfastness? This was his legacy. He was telling the people, look, these are the heroes, the examples there, we just need to take it. You will always be a few, so don't worry if you are in the minority. And because of this, he inspired every place. Okay, there's not a place he did not inspire. And if you were to look at his will, which is readily available in the books, there are many great lessons that a person can learn from them. Okay, and he sends this lesson towards, the first thing he mentions is the obligation of jihad, and he says a small lesson towards the scholars. He says something to the Muslim generally. He says something to the women themselves, to the Muslim women. But basically, he has a lot of wisdom in what he says. Small statements that have a lot of wisdom. And it's just some of the other statements that, inshallah, I will end by. And you will see this in the lives of the Muslims. One of the statements he says is that we have seen that much education with the accompanying of suppression of good deeds brings about a cold heart, a slackened determination, and a greed for life which argues unfeelingly and feebly, gets evidence by way of barren disputation. I.e., people who have a lot of education, you see them, they argue. Why? Because these people, these type of educated people, and you see this especially amongst the intellectual West. Okay, but yet they're willing to argue, debate, discuss. But when it comes to doing things, they are the people who slack. And he said, another of his statements about the few, he said, the men who know are few, and those who act are even fewer, and those who perform jihad are rarer and more scarce, and those who remain steadfast on this path are hardly sufficient to be mentioned. I mean, there are so few that, in his books pretty much he's mentioned nearly everybody in his time. This is how few, and it's these few who do a lot of action, really. And the last statement I will say before I end, and again, there's a lot of hikmah, you see that he reached, there's a lot of wisdom he reached because of the deeds he did. He says that we have seen that the land of Islam is still fertile, giving its produce at all times by its Lord's leave. And whenever the plantations find a person of insight to serve as a trustworthy administrator, then the work begins. And then he says something, and this is inshallah a lesson for everybody here. He says that this ummah only lacks exemplars, i.e., people to give the example, to lead the journey sincerely, who are well acquainted with mobilizing and exploration. Anything we do, a task, the main problem this work has is that people, it needs a few people to think this is what needs to happen. Use the resources whatever you have and just do the matter. Who are well acquainted with mobilizing and exploration, whatever work it is, and who give priority to noble people, and who give priority to commissioning of leadership. And then he says, in proportion to the determined ones come determinations. I.e., the more determined people are, the more likewise you'll get determination like it. So if you are extremely determined, you'll get other people, who are also extremely determined. But if you're slack, all you'll get is other slack people. So really look at yourselves. And in proportion to noble people comes noble deeds. And in the eye of little ones, in the eye of little ones, the small misfortune appears tremendous, and diminished in the eyes of the mighty are great distresses. So basically, it's all in the eye of the beholder. If you look at for some people, right, a small thing can be a big thing, while for people who are really big, have a big heart, who are these people who have set example, great distresses, it's nothing to them, they just carry on the way. An example I've already given you, for example, the way his wife reacted. Inshallah, to end, I would say that I've got a lot of photos of different things he was doing, and people want to see them, they can inshallah see them. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد ان لا اله الا انت واستغفرك واتوب اليك.